The Bonneville Shoreline Trail has been under construction for 30 years. Join me, Brandon Plewe, and my son Spencer as we hike the 200-mile length of the BST to learn about its past, present, and future, and explore the landscape of this boundary between the city and the wilderness.
You know, I don't think there's anywhere in America where you can be in the hills and looking right down on a downtown that big. Beautiful view. Today we're picking up right here where we left off last time, where we've got some new trails and such. I thought it'd be a great idea to meet with the guy that's responsible for trying to make all of this happen up here in Salt Lake City. So this is Tyler Fonarow. Tyler, how you doing?
Nice to see you, thanks.
Tyler is the Recreational Trails Manager for the Department of Public Lands at Salt Lake City. Did I get that right?
You got that right.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, and we're gonna pick up the trail here and go on. Tell us a little bit about your story. How did you come into this? You're fairly recent here to town.
I actually moved here 10 years ago. I've been a career school administrator and worked in experiential education.
Oh.
But my undergrad is in geography.
Yay!
Yeah, and a graduate degree in recreational administration. So while I was in schools, I always had a heart for recreational studies. And then being a geography major, it was a natural place to come work for public land. So it was when this opportunity came about 4 years ago, I started on as a trail specialist, and then the city was able to fund a new full-time recreational trails manager this year to support the growth and the implementation and the conservation of our Foothills Natural Area and our Jordan River corridor.
This trails plan that we've kind of been talking about was kind of underway already when you came.
Yeah.
When you were hired.
Yes, I was brought in almost near the end of most of the community engagement. We'd spent about 2 to 3 years doing as best as a job we could to engage the community, door hangers, community meetings, online surveys, all sorts of different vehicles to get people aware of what our hopes were for the Trails Plan and how to activate as much community engagement to do our planning process.
Always an important part of that. You can never quite get everybody who wants to have a say, but you try and get as many people as you can.
No, and that is the truth, because nothing gets people's attention like actually seeing it happen. So we got a lot more community engagement post our official engagement period, and we will continue to do that as it's an important part of our process. These are public lands. And as the evolving needs of the lands and our people change, we want to make sure we're keeping up with that.
And I guess that's important, that the master plan you created is just that. It's a master plan. It's not like you did an exact engineering design for every trail as part of that plan. So,
like you're saying, I like to say it was an outline, not a blueprint. Once you get the plan in place, then you can come in and then walk every alignment, make sure it's environmentally sustainable and appropriate, go through all the land ownership processes. That's why the Trails Plan is scheduled for 10 years.
How much new trail have you actually built under that plan in the past couple of years?
In a nutshell, phase 1 of our Trails Plan was budgeted for the first 2 years, and that was all on Salt Lake City property, so we weren't dealing with land agreements with other places. We have about 15 miles of new or integrated segment of trails. So for example, the segment of the BST we're walking on right now was an existing trail in a segment of the BST. We're going to transition up here in a minute to a new segment that we built kind of in line with the goals of the BST. I'm trying to keep the ethos of the shoreline in a reasonable, accessible trail that most users can have access to. So 12 to 15 miles.
That's what you've built so far, or that's
correct. In
that's
phase
just phase
1. And that was, April or June 2020 through May of 2021. We built about 12 miles of trails and about 3 miles of integrated trails existing.
All right, so which way do we go here?
So, great question. This is a new junction that from our Trails Plan. This was the existing BST here, and that went up to an old Jeep road that was the BST and went down, continued into the Meadow, and it's nice in sections like this, but a lot of it got to be about 30, 40, even 50 feet wide with some loose, steep shale, or not shale, but just rocks, and we wanted to make it more accessible, so we built this half-mile segment that kind of held about a 6% grade the whole way. This is existing as a non-BST trail net though, because it goes to one of our downhill bike trails and one of our hiking trails.
Okay, so it goes, this one's supposed to continue further up the ridge then.
Yeah, it goes on to kind of the heart of our new trails network in the Central Foothills.
Well, let's see what your new trails are like. This is
Yeah.
our first hike on your new trails.
There you go.
Well, another iconic view of downtown Salt Lake there. I guess they call this the Morris Meadows area down here.
Yeah, we call it the Meadow Trail, but in the Morris Reservoir is right here.
Okay. So that area down there got a good view down there of the, what do they call it? The I Street jumps?
The I Street Bike Park is what we're calling it, yeah.
And that's I guess they call it a free ride area. So it's where the kids can make their own trails and stuff.
And the kids are of all ages.
Of all ages,
yeah,
yes.
for sure. Public Utilities owns that parcel. This is all Public Utilities. Watershed, infrastructure, and public lands is taking over the management, and we're working with neighbors and the bike stewards, the master bike stewards, to come up with a management plan to protect both the environment and the jumps and the utilities infrastructure.
So there are actually, in that community, there are some people who have kind of taken charge.
Honestly, the first jump started in about the late 90s, and then there's been some adults who've been working on it for about 15 years, and they're kind of the grand poobahs or the mentors, so that the newer riders can come in and learn what is expected, because it's pretty unique to have a public space managed by volunteers.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we find that balance where there's not too much rogue stuff going on that could be liable to the city or the neighborhood.
How does the city handle liability? Since it's on city property. Is that something you're still trying to sort out?
Yeah, we literally next month are starting our working stakeholder group that is neighbors and the users, and that we'll have things that's going to run through our risk management and our lawyers to make sure that this is a viable structure, so that the city can supervise the volunteer management of the park.
Because they're liable to build some stuff down there that's probably dangerous.
Yeah, and I think that will likely happen, is they'll have some limits, because it is a finite space, and you know, and the people who've been doing it for 15 years know the design that works and the stuff that's probably too much for this kind of space. But it is people come not just from around the city, but from around the country, because they know about this park.
Yeah, it's a pretty remarkable little park here.
It really is.
You know, I'm really glad I have you along here, because this area right here, this meadow, I've always been confused about where exactly the trail goes. I mean, it's a bit of a maze in here, but I think it sounds like you're starting to get this sorted out.
Yeah, this was one of those interesting puzzles when you do strategic planning, because especially in an area like this where you have existing trails that are used regularly. This is the Meadow Trail. It's mostly for hiking, but it's just a loop like this, and then the BST intersects it, and then we added a new hiking and a new biking trail into it. So trying to think about how generally people move, and the geographer and I, we think about that. So we put these signs in and kind of added tiny little segments to make better connectivity.
So originally, the BST went down just over here.
Yes.
But that is now a downhill mountain biking only. Why is that? What's wrong? What was wrong with that trail?
So through the community engagement, there was a lot of people who liked the trail as is, and there was a lot of people who really struggled with of how steep it was, particularly for newer hikers or uphill bikers. We have two alignments that get from here down to City Creek, and that's what a lot of the user management best practices are suggesting.
So we've got one for uphill mountain bikes and hikers, and one for downhill mountain bikes, so they don't run into each other.
Yeah, so we'll be hiking down the uphill hiking trail.
So this is a section that you just built.
Yes.
When, last year?
Yeah, 2020, from spring 2020 to spring 2021.
Have you found that generally the bikes stay off of it?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
That's always a good design thing, when you see that people just naturally gravitate to where you want them to be.
Well, and when you design a trail to the interest of that group, people are just generally there.
I'm confused by where this sign is, where that sign's pointing.
Exactly, and that's, so this was the old trail, but it's textbook erosion problem.
Yep.
So we just rerouted this like 50 feet, but this is also the problem when you install a sign and it's off by 10 degrees, it creates more confusion.
All of a sudden you're like, this is the trail or that's the trail?
So my team's actually coming out on Tuesday. I'm gonna tell them they gotta figure this out, because this, we tries to close. This needs to go away.
I'm not sure what to do, and the trail guy can't figure out the trail sign.
This, I think, was, so, we can walk and talk. All these signs were stolen. We put in 30, and we didn't have anchors in them. These have anchors in them. This was over there, so somebody must have found this in a tree.
Well, that wasn't, it's not a bad trail there.
No, it gets you where you need to go.
Yeah, well, looks like we're here where we need to go. So
Yeah.
I think you're parked just right near here,
Yeah,
and we're gonna keep heading up the trail there. So
Right.
we'll depart here. But thank you so much today
Absolutely.
for coming, Tyler.
Really appreciate spending the time with you all, and thank you for doing this project. I think it's going to be good for our land conservation and our trail sustainable recreation.
Hopefully we can get the word out about all the work that everybody's doing.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and thanks for all that hard work.
Well, thank you. All right.
We'll see you. Have
Thanks
a great
again.
day.
Come on, Toby.
Well, we got to connect on the road here between these two. Fortunately, they've got half the road blocked off. But as I'm looking across the other part of Bonneville Boulevard over there, you can just kind of make out, the kids call that Gravity Hill. The road is actually going downhill as it leaves the canyon. So you can get in your car and you could actually like coast out of the canyon, which was really an odd sensation to be going downhill, but climbing out of the canyon. Quite the view. City Creek Canyon is beautiful up there, and because it's all owned by Salt Lake City as a watershed protection, it's largely unspoiled, so it's kind of been left alone to a large extent. If you look across there, you can see where we just were. You can actually see the Bonneville Shoreline Trail up there on that ridge, and then the meadow that we came through before we had to drop down, come up the canyon, come back up. In that master plan we were talking about, there was actually a plan from the point of the meadow that you can see there to bring a trail down this hillside to connect directly to the bottom of this trail. But as you can see, that's a really steep slope and cliffs, and plus it's owned by the water department, not by the Public Lands Department, so it's a bit tricky. So they've put that on hold for now. But maybe someday we can get a more direct Bonneville Shoreline Trail connection there. Oh, we made it to the top. That was brutal. Over the last couple miles, I've probably climbed 1,000 feet or so out of City Creek Canyon. The grade wasn't too bad, unfortunately. From here on out, I think we're mostly level, so it should be a much easier finish here. Interesting perspective here, looking actually down on Ensign Peak. I can see a few people out there getting a great view of downtown Salt Lake. Ensign Peak gets its name because just a day or two after the pioneers arrived in the Salt Lake Valley, Brigham Young and other church leaders climbed up to the top of that, raised a flag or an ensign on top of it. Wow, that's incredible. Well, we're leaving the Salt Lake Valley at long last. From here, the current trail follows that old utility road down there. But the plan is to, from about where that gate is there, to actually continue the trail at this elevation all the way around that ridge and connect with the trail that the Forest Service and Davis County have been planning. Unfortunately, this segment right here, even though Davis County and Forest Service planned it, it's actually part of Salt Lake City, so it needed to go through some extra hoops to get approval. But they've just about finished getting that section approved, and they're hoping, Tyler was saying, we might be able to get construction started this fall. When you're down there on I-15 or at the airport, you see that massive wall of that gravel pit, and you don't realize that right on top of that is this beautiful preserve. This is the aptly named Bonneville Shoreline Preserve, which Salt Lake City bought up so they could set aside this just really nice grassland area and keep it open, which kind of put an end to the development of houses that was working its way down the shoreline here. Oh look, here we are. We're now leaving Salt Lake County, going into Davis County. So we'll wrap up this episode here, and next time we will actually be exploring, I'm really excited, we're gonna be exploring a brand new section of trail that Davis County is just completing as we speak. So we'll see you then.